Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Sleepy Long Scientist, where we make the biggest mysteries of the universe feel like a warm blanket on a cold night. I'm here with you right now, wherever you are in this strange, spinning world, and I want you to take a deep breath with me. Tonight we're diving into something that's been tickling my brain for weeks. What is time, really? I know, it sounds like one of those questions you'd ask at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. But here's the thing. Time is the one force that rules absolutely everything in your life, yet none of us really understand what it actually is. Right now, as you're listening to this, time is doing something incredible around you. It's stretching and bending in ways that would blow your mind. And before we unpack this cosmic mystery together, I'm genuinely curious. What time is it where you are right now? Drop it in the comments because there's something beautiful about all of us experiencing this moment from different slices of time itself. If this journey sounds like your kind of late night adventure, hit that subscribe button and let's get wonderfully lost in time together. You know what's absolutely wild about time? Last week I was stuck in traffic for what felt like 3 hours, but when I checked my phone, only 12 minutes had passed. 12 minutes. My brain was convinced I'd aged a decade sitting there watching that red light mock me. But then yesterday, I got completely absorbed reading about black holes, and when I finally looked up, 4 hours had vanished like they never existed. 4 whole hours just gone, poof, disappeared into the void of my curiosity. We all live these weird time experiences every single day, but we never really stop to think about how bizarre that is. Think about the last time you were in a doctor's waiting room, those beige walls, that one magazine from 2019, the clock that seems to be moving backwards. 5 minutes feels like you've been transported to some kind of time prison. But put on your favourite song or get lost in a conversation with someone you love, and suddenly an hour feels like a heartbeat. Here's what's keeping me up at night though. If time is supposed to be this constant, reliable thing that clocks measure perfectly, why does it play these tricks on us? Why does our brain experience time so differently than what physics tells us time actually is? Tonight we're going to unravel this mystery together, and trust me, what we discover is going to change how you think about every single moment of your life. Let me tell you something that's going to mess with your head. Your brain is basically a time magician, and it's been fooling you your entire life. Right now, as you're listening to my voice, your brain is actively constructing your experience of time second by second, like a master storyteller weaving a tale. And sometimes, just sometimes, that storyteller gets a little creative with the truth. Scientists call this subjective time, and it's the reason why waiting for your coffee to brew feels like watching paint dry in slow motion, while binge-watching your favourite show makes hours disappear faster than cookies at a family gathering. Your brain isn't measuring time like a clock. It's feeling time, experiencing it, and sometimes completely making it up as it goes along. Think about that doctor's waiting room again. You're sitting there, surrounded by the most boring environment known to humanity, and suddenly your brain becomes hyper-aware of time. It's like having an overly enthusiastic internal narrator going tick-tock in your head. When nothing interesting is happening, your attention turns inward, and that internal focus makes you painfully aware of each crawling second. Your brain literally has nothing better to do than count time, so it does, obsessively. But flip that scenario completely. Remember the last time you had an amazing conversation with someone you love, or when you got completely lost in a book that made your heart race. In those moments, your brain goes, "Oh, we're busy. No need to watch the clock." It's like your mind's timekeeper takes a coffee break and forgets to come back. Psychologists call this the flow state, that magical zone where you become so absorbed in what you're doing that time just melts away like ice cream on a summer day. Here's where it gets really fascinating. Novelty plays tricks on your time perception too. When you experience something new, your brain works overtime to process and store all that fresh information. It's like your mind is taking extra photos to remember the moment. Later, when you look back, it feels like more time must have passed because there's so much mental footage of the event. This is why childhood summers felt endless. Your brain was constantly encountering new experiences and filing away every single detail. As we get older and settle into routines, our brains become efficient little filing machines. Same route to work, same lunch, same evening Netflix ritual. Fewer new experiences mean fewer memory markers, and suddenly months blur together like a time-lapse video. It's not that time is actually speeding up, it's that our brains are creating fewer bookmarks to mark the journey. Now let's talk about emotions, because they're absolute masters at warping time. Fear and anxiety stretch time like taffy. People who've been in car accidents often describe those few seconds feeling like minutes. Everything slowing down, every detail crystal clear. That's because your brain under stress goes into hyperdrive, capturing way more information than usual. It's like switching from regular photography to high-speed video. Later, when you remember it, all that extra detail creates the illusion of slow motion. But joy and excitement? They do the exact opposite. When you're laughing until your stomach hurts or dancing like nobody's watching, time flies because your brain is so focused on the experience that it forgets to keep track. It's the difference between watching a clock and dancing to music. One makes you painfully aware of every second, the other makes you forget seconds exist at all. Different cultures around the world have completely different relationships with time, and this shapes how people experience it. In English, we talk about time like it's money. We spend it, save it, waste it, run out of it. But some languages treat time more like weather or landscape, something you exist within rather than something you consume. Some cultures point behind them when talking about the future because it's unknown, and point forward for the past because you can see where you've been. Mind-blowing, right? Your brain also has built-in clocks that most people never think about. Your circadian rhythm is like having a 24-hour timer that controls when you feel sleepy, when your body temperature rises and falls, when certain hormones get released, but for shorter periods, seconds, minutes. Scientists think we use a kind of mental stopwatch involving brain regions like the basal ganglia. It works by counting neural pulses, like having a tiny drummer in your head keeping the beat. The problem is, we're terrible at it. Our time estimates can be wildly wrong, especially when we're distracted, multitasking, or emotionally charged. There's even something called the return trip effect. The journey home always feels shorter than the trip there, even when it takes exactly the same time. On the way there, your brain is processing new information, but on the way back, it already knows the route, so the experience feels compressed. And then there's the universal time distortion we all know and hate, the snooze button. Those 9 minutes between alarms somehow feel shorter than any other 9 minutes in the universe. It's probably because your brain is caught between sleep and waking, your internal stopwatch is confused, and consciousness is doing that fuzzy thing where it can't quite decide if you're awake or dreaming. The beautiful truth is that your experience of time isn't just about physics or biology. It's deeply personal, shaped by your attention, your emotions, your memories, and even the language you speak. Time isn't just something that happens to you, it's something you actively create with your mind, moment by moment, heartbeat by heartbeat. Picture this. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors had no clocks, no phones, no little digital numbers telling them when to wake up or when to eat. But they weren't stumbling around in temporal chaos. They were actually incredible timekeepers, way better than most of us today. They just used the biggest clock in the universe, the sky itself. These early humans were like cosmic detectives, reading time from the sun's journey across the heavens, the moon's changing face, and the slow dance of seasons. They knew that when certain stars appeared in certain positions, it was time to plant crops. When the sun hung lower in the sky, winter was coming. They lived in harmony with natural rhythms that we've almost completely forgotten in our artificially lit, climate-controlled world. The ancient Egyptians were the first people to say, "You know what? We need to get more precise about this time thing." Around 1500 BCE, they built these massive stone obelisks that worked like giant sundials. As the sun moved across the sky, the shadow would creep around the base, dividing daylight into segments they could actually count. Sure, an hour in summer was way longer than an hour in winter because the days themselves were different lengths, but it worked. It gave them structure, a way to organize society, schedule prayers, and probably figure out when the royal baker should start making bread. But here's the problem with sundials. They're absolutely useless at night and pretty disappointing on cloudy days. So clever minds started thinking, what flows steadily regardless of weather or time of day? Water. The water clock was born, and it was genius in its simplicity. Fill one container with water, let it drip slowly into another container, and boom, you've got a timer that works 24/7. The Egyptians, Greeks, and Chinese all developed versions of these, some so elaborate they had gears, bells, and little figures that would pop out to announce the hours. They were basically the world's first smart devices, just much wetter. Meanwhile, halfway around the world, the Maya were having their own mind-blowing relationship with time. These people, without metal tools or wheels, created calendar systems so accurate they could predict eclipses hundreds of years into the future. Their long count calendar could measure spans of time covering thousands of years. They were thinking about time on a scale that makes our modern planners look like grocery lists. They understood that time wasn't just about today or tomorrow. It was this vast cosmic river flowing through eternity. Back in medieval Europe, time was getting organized in a completely different way. Monks needed to know when to pray, not approximately, but precisely. So they installed these massive mechanical clocks in monastery towers. These early clocks didn't have faces or hands that you could look at. They just rang bells at regular intervals, turning time into sound. Imagine living in a world where time was something you heard rather than saw, where the rhythm of your day was marked by deep, resonating bells echoing across the countryside. The real game changer came in the 14th century with something called the verge escapement. This sounds incredibly technical, but it was basically a clever way to control the release of energy in a clock mechanism, making it tick more regularly and reliably. Suddenly, clockmakers could build smaller, more accurate timepieces. They started adding those familiar clock faces with hands that people could actually read, turning time from an auditory experience into a visual one. Then came Christian Huygens, a brilliant Dutch scientist who looked at a swinging pendulum and had one of those light bulb moments that change everything. In the 17th century, he created pendulum clocks that were accurate to within a minute per day. Before this, clocks could drift by hours. Imagine if your phone's clock was randomly 3 hours off sometimes. That's what people dealt with before Huygens came along. The push for even more precision came from an unexpected source: sailors lost at sea. To figure out where they were on the vast ocean, they desperately needed to know the exact time at a reference point like Greenwich. Enter John Harrison, an English carpenter who spent decades of his life creating marine chronometers. clocks so precise they could keep accurate time while being tossed around on a ship for months. His fourth model, called H4, was revolutionary. It changed navigation forever and probably saved thousands of lives by helping ships find their way home. The 20th century brought us into the age of quartz. These crystals, when zapped with electricity, vibrate at incredibly stable frequencies. Suddenly, timekeeping became cheap, portable, and accurate enough that being late to anything became a choice rather than a technological limitation. Quartz watches put precise time on everyone's wrist and made the excuse, "I didn't know what time it was," basically obsolete. But we weren't done pushing the boundaries. The most accurate clocks on Earth today are atomic clocks, which measure time using the natural vibrations of atoms. A cesium atom oscillates exactly 9,192,631,770 times per second. That's not just a fun fact, that's literally the official definition of a second. These clocks are so precise that if you ran one for 100 million years, it would only be off by less than a second. They're what keep GPS satellites synchronized, internet servers coordinated, and the global financial system running smoothly. What amazes me is this incredible human journey from watching shadows to counting atomic vibrations. We've spent thousands of years trying to capture, measure, and understand this invisible force that shapes our lives. And yet, despite all our technological precision, time still feels deeply personal and mysteriously elusive. Enter Isaac Newton, the man with the wildest hair in science and a personality to match. This 17th century genius didn't just want to understand the world, he wanted to nail it down, pin it to a board like a butterfly collection, and that included time itself. Newton looked at the chaotic, messy universe around him and said, "I'm going to make sense of all this." And honestly, he pretty much did. Newton's vision of time was beautifully simple and incredibly powerful. He imagined the universe as this grand, invisible theatre where all the drama of existence played out. Picture a massive stage with planets, apples, cannonballs, and eventually bicycles all moving around as the actors, but the stage itself, space and time, never changed. Time, in Newton's mind, was like a perfectly steady river flowing at exactly the same rate everywhere, for everyone, forever. He actually wrote this down in words that still give me chills. Absolute, true, and mathematical time of itself, and from its own nature flows equitably without regard to anything external. Translation: time is like that friend who's always punctual. It doesn't care if you're running late, having the best day of your life, or stuck in traffic. It just keeps flowing at its own steady pace, completely indifferent to what's happening around it. This wasn't just philosophical rambling. Newton's absolute time became the foundation for describing motion in ways that actually worked. Drop an object today or tomorrow, here or on the other side of the world, and Newton's equations could tell you exactly where it would land at any given moment. His math could predict the swing of a pendulum, the orbit of the moon, even the path of a cannonball fired from a castle wall. Time was the steady backdrop that made all of this predictable and reliable. But Newton had a rival, and rivalries in science can get pretty heated. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, who also invented calculus around the same time as Newton, talk about awkward, completely disagreed with this whole absolute time idea. Leibniz argued that time wasn't some invisible thing flowing in the background. Instead, he said time was just a way of describing the order of events, a relationship between things that happen. Think about it like this. Imagine a clock ticking away in a completely empty universe. Total darkness, absolute silence, nothing else existing anywhere. Newton would say that clock is still measuring time, still marking the passage of real, absolute time. Leibniz would laugh and say it's just a fancy paperweight because without events happening, without things changing, time has no meaning. For Leibniz, time only existed when stuff was actually going on. Newton wasn't having any of this philosophical wishy-washiness. He insisted time was real and flowed regardless of whether anyone was around to notice it, which honestly does match how it feels when you're waiting for water to boil. His framework became what we now call classical mechanics, and for hundreds of years it worked absolutely beautifully. Engineers used Newton's time to build bridges that didn't fall down. Astronomers used it to predict eclipses decades in advance, and eventually train conductors used it to run schedules that people could actually rely on. If you wanted to calculate anything involving motion, a spinning wheel, a swinging pendulum, the orbit of Jupiter, Newton's absolute time was your best friend. The genius of Newton's approach was its universality. Time was the same everywhere for everything. Whether you were in London or Beijing, whether you were standing still or riding a horse, time ticked along at exactly the same rate. This gave scientists a common language, a shared reference point that made the universe feel orderly and comprehensible. But here's the thing about scientific revolutions. They often start with tiny cracks in seemingly perfect theories. By the 19th century, scientists studying light and electricity started noticing weird things that didn't quite fit Newton's picture. The speed of light seemed to behave strangely, always travelling at the same rate no matter how fast you were moving. In Newton's universe, that made no sense. If you're running toward a light beam, shouldn't you catch up to it a little bit? This puzzle would simmer in the background of physics for decades until a young patent clerk named Albert Einstein came along. But that's a story for our next chapter. For now, let's appreciate what Newton gave us, a vision of time as this reliable universal constant that turned the chaos of motion into something we could understand, predict, and trust. Even today, when you check your watch or set an alarm, you're living in Newton's world of absolute flowing time. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and everything is running backwards. Your alarm clock rings, but the sound waves travel back into it. Your coffee gets hotter as you drink it, steam flowing downward into the cup. Toast jumps out of your mouth and lands perfectly buttered on your plate. Raindrops fly upward into clouds. It sounds completely insane, impossible, like something from a fever dream. But here's the mind-bending thing. According to most fundamental laws of physics, this backwards world isn't actually forbidden. This is one of the deepest mysteries in all of science. If you look at the equations that govern how particles move, how forces work, even how quantum mechanics operates, time doesn't really have a preferred direction. You could film two particles colliding and play the video in reverse, and the physics would still make perfect sense. No alarms would go off, no laws would be broken. The math works just as well backwards as forwards. Yet in our everyday world, time feels like the ultimate one-way street. Eggs break but never unbreak. Books burn to ash, but ashes never spontaneously reassemble into pages. We remember yesterday, but not tomorrow. So what's going on? Why this massive disconnect between the fundamental laws that allow time to go either direction and our lived experience where time clearly has an arrow pointing from past to future? The answer lies in one of the most important and honestly kind of messy laws in physics, the second law of thermodynamics. This law tells us that in any closed system, like our universe, entropy always increases over time. Entropy is basically a measure of disorder, randomness, how mixed up and chaotic things are. Think of it as nature's fundamental rule. Things always go from neat and tidy to messy and scattered. You can scramble an egg, but you'll never see scrambled eggs spontaneously separate back into a perfect yellow yolk and clear white. Your bedroom naturally becomes cluttered unless you actively organize it. That missing sock from the laundry? It disappeared into the entropy void and is never coming back, at least not with its partner. This relentless march toward increasing disorder gives time its arrow, its direction. Here's why this is so profound. It's not that the laws of physics prevent time from running backwards. It's that probability stands firmly in the way. Imagine a wine glass shattering on your kitchen floor. That's a high entropy state. Pieces scattered everywhere, energy lost as heat and sound. Technically, it's not impossible for all those fragments to spontaneously leap back together into a perfect glass. The laws of physics allow it, but the probability is so astronomically small that it would never happen even if you waited longer than the age of the universe. This leads to one of cosmology's biggest head-scratchers. Why was the early universe in such a low entropy state to begin with? If entropy must always increase, there had to be a starting point, some kind of cosmic organization from which all this disorder could unfold. The leading theory is that right after the Big Bang, the universe was incredibly smooth, uniform, and ordered. Over billions of years, gravity did its thing, matter clumped together, and the universe gradually became the lumpy, chaotic place we see today. But why it started so organized remains one of physics' greatest unsolved mysteries. Some scientists think the answer involves the deep connection between entropy, time, and the shape of space itself. Others wonder if we're asking the wrong question entirely, like trying to understand water from a fish's perspective. There are actually multiple arrows of time, and fascinatingly, they all point in the same direction. There's the psychological arrow. We remember the past but not the future because memory formation is a physical process that increases entropy. There's the causal arrow. Causes always precede effects because adding energy to any system makes it slightly messier. And there's the cosmological arrow, the expansion of the universe itself, with galaxies moving apart and everything cooling down over time. The fact that all these arrows line up isn't random. It suggests that time's direction is deeply woven into the structure of reality itself. It's carved by the flow of energy, the spreading of information, and the gentle dispersal of everything from what was once a very tidy beginning. But here's what keeps me up at night thinking about this. Not everyone agrees that time as we experience it is fundamental. Some physicists argue that the arrow of time only emerges when complex systems like us observe simpler ones. The universe doesn't feel time flowing, we do. Time might not be a force or a flow, just a label we put on different states as entropy increases. So the next time you feel like time is slipping away, remember it's not lost, it's just following the one rule it's really good at. Moving forward, increasing entropy, and leaving behind a trail of broken eggs, mismatched socks, and the beautiful, irreversible story of everything that's ever happened. If classical physics treats time like a reliable train schedule that always runs on time, then quantum mechanics treats it more like a jazz band at 2 a.m. Improvised, mysterious, and just when you think you understand the rhythm, it throws you a curveball that makes you question everything you thought you knew about music itself. Welcome to the quantum world, where particles don't have definite positions until you look at them, where cats can be simultaneously alive and dead, and where time becomes less of a fundamental force and more of a polite suggestion that reality occasionally chooses to ignore. In this bizarre realm, the rules we're used to don't just bend, they do backflips while juggling flaming torches. In our everyday classical world, you can point to any object and confidently say, it's right there, doing that specific thing at this exact moment. But quantum particles laugh at this kind of certainty. They exist as probability clouds, mathematical ghosts of where they might be and what they might be doing. They're everywhere and nowhere until the moment you try to pin them down. So where does time fit into this cosmic uncertainty? Here's where it gets really weird. Time doesn't play the starring role in quantum mechanics that it does everywhere else in physics. In fact, it mostly shows up as a background parameter, like a stage manager quietly keeping things moving behind the scenes while all the quantum drama unfolds center stage. Take the Schrödinger equation, which is basically the Bible of quantum mechanics. It describes how that fuzzy probability cloud evolves and changes, but time in this equation isn't something that bends or stretches like in Einstein's relativity. It just sits there, ticking away like Newton's old absolute time, completely unchanged while space and matter dance their unpredictable quantum waltz in front of it. This creates a fascinating split personality in physics. Quantum mechanics describes how things change over time, but it doesn't explain what time actually is. It treats time like a fixed, unchanging backdrop, while everything else jiggles and jumps around unpredictably. Meanwhile, Einstein's relativity says time is dynamic, flexible, part of the very fabric of space-time itself. Trying to merge these two theories is like trying to teach a classical orchestra to play jazz while the jazz musicians are trying to read sheet music. They're both beautiful, they're both right in their own domains, but getting them to work together at the same party? That's where things get messy. This brings us to one of the deepest puzzles in modern physics, the problem of time in quantum gravity. When scientists try to describe the entire universe quantum mechanically, something absolutely mind-bending happens. Time disappears completely from the equations. There's something called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation that attempts to describe the quantum state of everything that exists, and it looks like the Schrödinger equation's bigger, more ambitious cousin, except it has no time variable whatsoever. Think about what this means. According to our best attempts at a theory of quantum gravity, the universe at its deepest level is timeless. No past, no future, just an eternal, unchanging now. It's like the ultimate meditation state, pure being without becoming. So how do we experience time if it doesn't exist at the fundamental level? Some physicists think time is emergent, not a basic ingredient of reality, but something that appears when you zoom out far enough. Like how temperature emerges from the motion of countless molecules, time might emerge from the complex interactions of quantum systems. Others look to quantum entanglement, that spooky phenomenon where particles become linked across vast distances. Some theories suggest that time's arrow, maybe even time itself, could arise from the universe becoming increasingly entangled with itself. The more tangled quantum relationships become, the more time seems to flow. And then there's the many worlds interpretation, where every quantum event splits the universe into parallel branches. In this view, time isn't a river. It's an infinite tree, constantly branching into new timelines with every quantum coin flip. The beautiful paradox is that we live in a world where quantum interactions average out into the smooth, reliable time we experience daily. Whether time is fundamental or emergent, real or illusion, we still wake up, brush our teeth, and live our lives moment by precious moment. Your body is running the most sophisticated timekeeping system on Earth, and you probably don't even know it exists. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's an intricate network of biological clocks humming away inside you, orchestrating everything from when you feel sleepy to how your liver processes that late-night snack you probably shouldn't have eaten. This internal timekeeper is called your circadian rhythm, from the Latin words meaning about a day. It's like having a personal conductor directing a 24-hour symphony inside your cells, and this conductor has been perfecting its performance for millions of years of evolution. Every living thing on this planet, humans, animals, plants, even bacteria, carries some version of this ancient timing system. The master clock lives in a tiny cluster of about 20,000 neurons in your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It sounds fancy, but think of it as your body's head timekeeper, constantly sending out signals to coordinate all the other clocks scattered throughout your organs. Your liver has its own clock, your heart has one, even your skin cells are keeping time. It's like having thousands of synchronized watches all working together to keep your body running smoothly. Light is the main cue that keeps your internal clock aligned with the outside world. When morning sunlight hits your eyes, it sends a signal straight to that master clock saying, "Hey, it's time to wake up." This triggers a cascade of changes. Your body temperature starts rising, cortisol gets released to give you energy, and melatonin production shuts down. As evening approaches and light fades, the process reverses. Your brain starts pumping out melatonin, your body temperature drops, and everything slows down to prepare for sleep. But here's where modern life gets tricky. Our ancestors lived by firelight and candlelight once the sun went down. Now we're bathed in artificial light well into the night, scrolling through phones that emit blue light that tricks our brain into thinking it's still daytime. Your poor circadian rhythm gets confused, like trying to follow a GPS that keeps recalculating because you're driving through tunnels. Jet lag is probably the most dramatic example of what happens when your internal clock gets out of sync. You fly across time zones, but your body is still running on home time. Your liver thinks it's midnight and shuts down for the night, but you're trying to eat lunch in your new location. Your brain is producing melatonin when you need to be alert, and trying to keep you awake when you desperately need sleep. It usually takes about 1 day per time zone crossed for your body to fully adjust. Shift workers deal with this constantly, fighting against millions of years of evolution that programmed us to be awake during the day and asleep at night. Night shift nurses, security guards, and emergency responders are essentially asking their bodies to run backwards, and the health consequences can be significant. Higher rates of diabetes, heart disease, and depression. Age changes your circadian rhythms too. Teenagers naturally want to stay up late and sleep in because their melatonin production is shifted later in the day. It's not laziness, it's biology. As we get older, we tend to become more of a morning person whether we like it or not, because our internal clocks shift earlier. The beautiful thing is that your circadian rhythm isn't just about sleep. It controls when your blood pressure peaks, when your reaction time is fastest, when your immune system is most active, even when you're most likely to have a heart attack. Your body temperature fluctuates by about 2 degrees throughout the day in a precise pattern. Your metabolism speeds up and slows down on schedule. Understanding your personal rhythm can be life-changing. Some people are natural larks, others are night owls, and most of us fall somewhere in between. Working with your chronotype instead of against it can improve your sleep, your mood, your productivity, and your overall health. Let's be completely honest here. No discussion about time would be complete without tackling the question that's launched 1,000 science fiction movies, sparked countless late-night debates, and probably caused more arguments between physicists than any other topic. Can we actually travel through time? The answer is going to surprise you, frustrate you, and maybe blow your mind a little bit. Because it turns out that time travel isn't just possible. We're all doing it right now, just very, very slowly. Here's the thing that most people don't realize. Traveling into the future is not only possible, it's been scientifically proven, and it happens every single day. Remember Einstein's time dilation from earlier? When you move really fast, time literally slows down for you compared to everyone else. If you hopped on a spaceship and zoomed around the galaxy at near light speed, then returned to Earth, you could find that decades had passed here while you'd only aged a few years. Congratulations, you just time traveled to the future. This isn't science fiction, it's been tested. Astronauts who spend months on the International Space Station experience tiny amounts of time dilation. They age microseconds less than people on Earth because they're moving so fast in orbit. It's not enough to notice without atomic clocks, but it's real, measurable time travel into the future. Those astronauts literally return to Earth having experienced less time than the rest of us. But let's talk about what everyone really wants to know. Can we travel backward in time? Can we visit the past, fix our mistakes, maybe buy some Bitcoin when it was cheap? This is where physics gets really weird and really divided. Einstein's general relativity does allow for some solutions that could theoretically permit backward time travel, but they're so exotic and impractical that they might as well be magic spells. One possibility involves wormholes, hypothetical tunnels connecting distant points in space-time. Picture the universe as a flat sheet of paper, then fold it so 2 points touch and poke a hole through both layers. That hole is your wormhole, a shortcut through space-time. If you could manipulate one end of the wormhole by accelerating it to near light speed, you might create a time difference between the two ends. Step through, and theoretically you could emerge in the past. But here's the catch. Wormholes probably don't exist naturally, and if they do, they'd likely collapse instantly. Keeping one open would require something called negative energy, which is about as available as unicorn tears and probably twice as expensive. So while wormholes make for great movie plots, building one is slightly beyond our current engineering capabilities. Even if we could travel back in time, we'd immediately crash into some brain-melting paradoxes. The grandfather paradox is the classic example. You go back in time and accidentally prevent your grandparents from meeting, which means you're never born, which means you can't go back in time to prevent them from meeting. It's a logical loop that ties itself in knots and refuses to untangle. Scientists have proposed several ways around this. One idea is that the timeline is fixed. Everything you do in the past was always part of history, so you can't actually change anything. You might think you're altering events, but you're just playing out your predetermined role in an already written story. Another possibility involves parallel universes. Change something in the past, and you create a new timeline while your original universe continues unchanged. There's also the delightfully named Novikov self-consistency principle, which basically says the universe has built-in safeguards against paradoxes. Try to kill your grandfather and your gun will jam, you'll trip, or he'll unexpectedly join a monastery. The cosmos itself conspires to prevent timeline violations. But here's what really puzzles me. If backward time travel is possible, where are all the time tourists? If someone in the future eventually cracks the code and builds a working time machine, shouldn't we be swimming in visitors from tomorrow? They could be taking selfies with dinosaurs, attending the first Olympics, or trying to warn us about whatever apocalypse they're dealing with in 3024. Some theories suggest that time travel might only work back to the point when the first time machine was invented. You can't visit an era that doesn't have temporal infrastructure. Others think time travelers might be incredibly good at staying hidden, or maybe they're bound by some kind of temporal prime directive that prevents them from interfering with the past. The more I think about it, the more I wonder if time's one-way nature is actually a feature, not a bug. Yes, we fantasize about going back to fix our mistakes, to say the things we should have said, to make different choices. But maybe the irreversibility of time is what makes moments precious. We can't edit our lives like a movie. We have to live them fully, completely, one heartbeat at a time. Perhaps the real magic isn't in traveling through time, but in recognizing that every moment we're living right now is unrepeatable, irreplaceable, and absolutely unique. We're all time travelers already, moving forward together through this strange and beautiful journey from past to future, and maybe that's the greatest adventure of all. We've traveled through time perception, ancient clocks, Einstein's relativity, and quantum weirdness, but now we're going to ask the question that might keep you awake tonight. Does time actually exist at all? I know this sounds like the kind of thing you'd debate at 3 a.m. after too much coffee, but this is a question that serious physicists lose sleep over, and the answer might fundamentally change how you see reality itself. Let's start with how most of us naturally think about time. It feels like a river carrying us from yesterday to today to tomorrow. We're all floating downstream together, unable to paddle backwards, only forward. Sometimes the current is gentle, sometimes it rushes, but it's always flowing. This view is called presentism, the idea that only this exact moment right now is real. The past is gone, the future doesn't exist yet, and all we ever truly have is now. But Einstein's theories opened up a completely different possibility, one that's honestly a bit unsettling. It's called eternalism, and it suggests that time doesn't flow at all. Instead, all moments in time, your childhood birthday party, your future retirement, everything in between, already exists simultaneously. The universe is like a four-dimensional block where time is just another dimension, like length, width, and height. In this block universe model, you don't move through time, you exist across it. Every moment of your life is equally real and equally present, just located at different coordinates in space-time. You're not getting older, you simply are older at some temporal coordinates and younger at others. It's like being a thread woven through a cosmic tapestry where every inch of the thread exists simultaneously. This idea emerges naturally from relativity. Remember how simultaneity depends on your speed? Two observers moving at different velocities can disagree about what now means. If there's no universal present moment, no cosmic clock ticking for everyone, then maybe the whole idea of time flowing is just an illusion created by our limited perspective. But quantum mechanics throws another curveball into this philosophical baseball game. When physicists try to merge quantum theory with general relativity to describe the entire universe, something absolutely mind-bending happens. Time vanishes completely from the equations. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which attempts to describe the quantum state of everything that exists, is completely timeless. No past, no future, just an eternal, unchanging mathematical now. If time disappears at the most fundamental level of reality, then what are we actually experiencing? One possibility is that time is emergent, not a basic ingredient of the universe, but something that appears when simpler things interact in complex ways. Think about how wetness emerges from H2O molecules, or how consciousness emerges from neurons firing. Maybe time emerges from the relationships between quantum systems, like a melody that appears when you play enough notes together. Some physicists believe time arises from the growth of quantum entanglement. As particles become more connected and the universe becomes increasingly tangled with itself, this creates the arrow of time we experience. Others think time emerges from thermodynamics. We feel time flowing because entropy always increases, giving us a sense of direction from order to chaos. There's also physicist Julian Barber's radical idea that time is completely illusory. In his view, the universe consists of countless frozen moments, like an infinite collection of photographs that don't change or evolve. Our sense of time passing comes from the way memories are embedded within these static moments. We feel like we're moving through time, but we're actually just experiencing different snapshots that contain different amounts of information about other snapshots. But here's what fascinates me about this whole debate. Even if time is an illusion, it's the most convincing illusion in the universe. We still age, seasons still change, clocks still tick. Whether time is fundamental or emergent, whether it flows or just exists, it still structures every aspect of our lives. We plan for the future, learn from the past, and live in an endless stream of present moments. Maybe the question isn't whether time exists, but what it means for something to exist. Stories aren't made of atoms, but they're real enough to move us to tears. Love isn't a fundamental force of physics, but it shapes our entire lives. Time might be the same, real not because it's carved into the bedrock of reality, but because it's woven into the fabric of consciousness, experience, and meaning. Whether time is fundamental or emergent, flowing or static, the moments we're living right now feel absolutely real. And perhaps that's the only kind of existence that really matters, the kind we can feel, experience, and share with each other as we navigate this mysterious journey through whatever time actually is. There's something about knowing our time is limited that makes every moment feel both infinite and fleeting at the same time. Death is the ultimate timekeeper, the final alarm clock that gives weight and meaning to every second we're given. It's a heavy topic, I know, but there's something strangely comforting about exploring how our awareness of mortality shapes the way we experience time itself. Think about how differently you experience time when you're truly aware that it's precious. Remember the last time you said goodbye to someone you love, not knowing when you'd see them again? Those final moments probably felt stretched out, crystalline, like your brain was trying to capture every detail and hold on to them forever. That's because the awareness of endings changes our relationship with time in the most profound way possible. People who've had near-death experiences often describe time doing impossible things. Some report their entire life flashing before their eyes in what doctors say was only seconds of cardiac arrest, but they experienced it as hours of vivid, detailed memories. Others describe a sense of timelessness, of existing in a space where past, present, and future all collapsed into one eternal moment. Whether these experiences reflect something real about the nature of time or are just the brain's way of processing trauma, they show us how radically our perception of time can shift when we're confronted with our own mortality. Different cultures have fascinating relationships with time and death that shape how people live their daily lives. In some Buddhist traditions, monks meditate on the inevitability of death not to become morbid, but to cultivate a deeper appreciation for the present moment. When you truly accept that your time is limited, suddenly washing dishes becomes meditation, conversations become sacred, and even traffic jams become opportunities to simply exist. There's also something called the holiday paradox that relates to aging and time perception. As we get older, years seem to fly by faster, but this acceleration often makes us more aware of time's passage. A 70-year-old might say, "Where did the time go?" while simultaneously being more present in their daily moments than they were at 30. It's like awareness of time's limits actually slows down our subjective experience of it. Scientists have studied how terminal illness affects time perception, and the results are both heartbreaking and beautiful. Many people report that facing death actually enriches their experience of time. Minutes spent with family become more vivid, sunsets more meaningful, ordinary conversations more precious. It's as if the proximity to the end makes the middle more alive. This isn't about being morbid or depressing, it's about recognizing that our mortality gives time its texture, its urgency, its sweetness. If we had infinite time, would anything feel precious? Would we ever be motivated to create, to love, to reach out to each other? Our limited time isn't a curse, it's what makes every heartbeat matter. Even sleep, our daily rehearsal for death, changes our relationship with time. Those moments between waking and sleeping, when consciousness fades and time becomes elastic, give us a glimpse of what timelessness might feel like. Some say we practice dying every night, and in doing so, we learn to appreciate the gift of waking up to time once again. The ultimate truth about time and death isn't that death makes time meaningless, it's that death makes time sacred. Every moment you're alive, every breath you take, every sunset you witness is a small miracle happening in borrowed time. And maybe that's the most beautiful way to think about our brief dance with temporality, not as something we're losing, but as something we're incredibly lucky to experience at all. Every night you slip into an alternate reality where time follows completely different rules, and you probably don't even think about how absolutely wild that is. In dreams, you can live entire lifetimes in a single REM cycle, have conversations that feel like they last hours but happen in minutes, or experience that strange sensation where you're simultaneously a child and an adult existing in multiple time periods at once. Dream time is probably the weirdest thing your brain does with temporal perception, and that's saying something. You've probably had those dreams that feel like epic novels, complex storylines, character development, emotional arcs that seem to unfold over days or weeks. Then you wake up and realize you've only been asleep for 20 minutes. Your brain essentially created a time-lapse movie and convinced you it was real-time experience. Scientists think this happens because during REM sleep, the part of your brain that normally keeps track of time, your prefrontal cortex, is essentially taking a nap while the rest of your brain throws a creativity party. Without that internal timekeeper doing its job, your dreaming mind can string together memories, emotions, and random neural firing into narratives that completely ignore the laws of temporal physics. Then there's lucid dreaming, where you become aware you're dreaming while still in the dream. Lucid dreamers often report being able to manipulate time within their dreams, slowing down moments they want to savor, fast-forwarding through boring parts, or even rewinding and replaying scenes like they're editing a movie. It's like having a remote control for reality, except the reality is entirely in your head. Sleep cycles themselves create this fascinating relationship with time. You drift through different stages of sleep, each with its own temporal personality. Deep sleep feels timeless. You could be under for 20 minutes or 4 hours and have no sense of which it was. Light sleep preserves some time awareness, which is why you can sometimes wake up naturally right before your alarm goes off. Your brain was keeping one eye on the clock even while sleeping. Sleep deprivation completely warps your time perception when you're awake. When you're exhausted, minutes drag like hours, but paradoxically, entire days can blur together into a foggy mess where you can't remember if something happened yesterday or last week. Your internal timekeeper starts malfunctioning when it doesn't get proper rest, like trying to navigate with a broken compass. There's something magical about that twilight zone between waking and sleeping, hypnagogia and hypnopompia, where time becomes completely elastic. In those moments, you might have insights that feel profound, conversations with people who aren't there, or creative breakthroughs that seem to download directly into your consciousness. Many artists and scientists have reported getting their best ideas in this liminal space where time bends. What fascinates me most is how dreams seem to exist outside our normal cause and effect timeline. In dreams, effects can precede causes. You can be in multiple places simultaneously, and your past self can have conversations with your future self. It's like your sleeping brain gets to experiment with different models of reality, including ones where time isn't linear. Maybe dreams are proof that our consciousness isn't as bound by time as we think. Every night, for a few hours, we all become time travelers, exploring realities where the rules we live by during the day simply don't apply. And then we wake up, return to linear time, and mostly forget we ever had that superpower at all. Here we are, beautiful souls, at the end of our gentle journey through the mystery of time, and honestly, I feel like we've been on the most incredible adventure together. We started by asking what time really is, and we've discovered that it's not just one thing, it's everything. It's the rhythm pulsing in your cells, the memories painted in your mind, the warping of space-time around massive objects, and maybe, just maybe, the most beautiful illusion consciousness has ever created. We've seen that time stretches and shrinks with your emotions, that it's been measured by shadows and atomic vibrations, that it might flow like a river or exist all at once like a cosmic photograph album. We've explored how your brain constructs your experience of time moment by moment, how ancient civilizations tracked it across the heavens, and how modern physics has turned our understanding completely upside down. The truth is, after all this exploration, time remains wonderfully, mysteriously elusive. But maybe that's exactly as it should be. Whether time is fundamental or emergent, flowing or eternal, real or imagined, it gives shape to every heartbeat, every breath, every moment of love and laughter and quiet contemplation. It reminds us that this present moment, right here, right now, with you listening and me speaking, is absolutely unique and will never come again. And in a universe full of cosmic mysteries, perhaps that's the most beautiful truth of all. Sweet dreams, time travelers,